Hi everyone. We're going to get started here with our next panel. So as I mentioned briefly before, my name is Eitan, and I work with our child migration protection team in New York with UNICEF USA. And yes, sure. Is this better? So I'll hold it close. Thanks. And UNICEF works, as many of you know, in 190 countries around the world. In a couple of different pillars. And one of our pillars that we work in, one of the thematic areas, is the child protection work. And within that lies what we call children associated with armed conflict. And so this is a term that expands on the term child soldier to include all the children that are impacted when they're living in these types of communities, whether they have to work as messengers, as chefs, as cleaners, or if they're sexually exploited by the armed groups. And then within that is our work interrupting and kind of removing kids from situations where there's gang violence, getting at the root cause of why someone might join a gang, working with the aftermath of the effects of those that are affected by it. And this is an issue that impacts children in San Pedro Sula and Honduras, just as it does here in Chicago. And so today I am really, really excited to introduce two amazing panelists that are sitting here with me. And so all the way at the end, we have Dr. Nika Jones-Tapia, who is a clinical psychologist and a leader in resistance at Chicago Beyond. She currently leads their initiative dedicated to addressing mental wellness of children whose parents are incarcerated. And previously, she was the executive director of Cooks County Jail, where she developed the Mental Health Transition Center to build a support system for successful reentry into the community after incarceration. So please join me in welcoming Nika. And we also have Lupe Cruz, who is the Cure Violence Director of Training for Latin and Central America. She previously supervised all of Cure Violence Latino violence interrupters in Chicago, and she now oversees the implementation of the Cure Violence models in Honduras, South Africa, Puerto Rico, Mexico, Canada, Argentina, El Salvador, Colombia, and Guatemala. So that's quite a portfolio. So please join me in welcoming Lupe. And so our first question, I'm going to throw it to them and jump in as you see fit, but so you both work for organizations that are trying to get at the root cause of what ends up being a very, very traumatic experience for kids. This experience with gangs, the incarceration, the cycle they're in. So can you tell us a little bit about your respective organizations and kind of the theory of change that you work with, and anything in your personal background that inspired you to do this type of work?
My name is Lupe. And I'm going to share a little bit about my background and what brought me to this work in the Cure Violence model. I was sharing earlier that when I came to Cure Violence, hello? Well, when I came to the Cure Violence program, I volunteered for a couple months. So I was kind of checking it out. You know, I was trying to get a feel for it. I worked in the community. I come from a little village community. I grew up as an orphan. Slept in the streets. Became a gang member at a very young age. I had two brothers. Never knew my dad. My mom passed away when I was 6. So the gang became my family. I've worked in the community for over 20 years, but it started with understanding that I needed change. When my brother was 17, he was sentenced to 70 years in prison. And I remember him saying that he had set goals, and that one day he was going to do this, one day he was going to do that, one day he was going to be a national gang leader, and he had accomplished all his goals. But at that moment, he said, what if I would have put goals like, I'm going to go to school, get married, and have kids? I remember him saying I didn't know how to set that goals because all he knew was the streets, and the gang was his life. But I also remember him saying we didn't have programs, we didn't have a hook back then. We didn't have people reaching out and saying, this is not normal. You know, so times have changed. And when I came to Cure Violence, I lived the model and I replicated all over the world. I believe in it. It changed me. Not that I was not changed already, but it changed the way I was looking at my community. where I come from. At one time I used to say, and it's all effed up. Now I say we have a problem. Now I say we can fix it. I work in Honduras in San Pedro Sula and Chamelicon. Oh, the ballgame. It humbles me. When I return to Chicago, I always say we can fix what's going on in Chicago because I'm working in countries where it's a whole other ballgame, the structure over there. I'm working in communities where the games dictate how you live in your community. I've been there 6 years in San Pedro Sula, in Salvador, in Guatemala, in South Africa. It's a whole other ballgame. We can fix what's going on here. I believe it. You know, so the methodology that we work with your values is a health approach. You know, how we're looking at violence and it's being transmitted from our own homes. It's a generational thing, it's a social norm. And the community I come from, it's acceptable, it's normalized. But how do we start changing that it's not normal that our kids at a very young age don't cross a certain street because they live on the west side of Little Village. They don't wear a certain color, they don't put their head to the right or the left, they don't talk to certain people, they can't go to school if there's no school. You know, Little Village for a long time, we didn't have a school on the west side of high school. I come from that generation. So you went to Farragut, you're probably gonna get beaten every day or killed, you know. And back then we didn't have a high school on the west side, so you went to the outpost school on Springfield and pretty much everybody was partied there, or you dropped out. That was the norm. And you knew when you graduated, you weren't going to high school. Because we didn't have a high school in this community. And pure violence changes the way, shifts the way we look at our communities. And the way, with me, it changed the way I look at my life. The way I look at my brother's life. You know, I tell my kids in the community, I was you. I was that girl. I was that girl on the street. And I made it. So sometimes you just gotta give them hope.
So I see a lot of incredible faces in the room. So just to get some baseline information, how many of you are familiar with the fact that here in Chicago, we have one of the largest jails in the country? Okay, a few. So here in Chicago, we have Cook County Jail. Cook County Jail is one of the largest jails in the country. Right now, it holds about 5,600 individuals behind its walls. That's mothers, fathers, people's sons, their daughters that are disconnected from their families and their communities. The overwhelming majority of those individuals are Black, 74% of them. And the majority of them are from the south and west sides of Chicago. That is what inequity looks like. So I left Cook County Jail as the warden last March, and I now work with an organization, Chicago Beyond. So Chicago Beyond was founded by Liz Dozier. She's a former high school principal that worked within the Chicago public school system. She used to be the principal at Fenger High School. She started this philanthropic organization to back the fight for youth equity. Now, what does that look like? Chicago Beyond invests in organizations, people, ideas, research, all centered around helping our young people, particularly those on the south side of Chicago, to have a fighting chance. To date, Chicago Beyond has invested more than $30 million in 14 nonprofit organizations. So by backing the fight for youth equity, Chicago Beyond is backing the fight for justice. And that's what really resonated with me when I thought about what I wanted to do once I left Cook County Jail. It's not enough to highlight the problem, but an organization like Chicago Beyond is getting at the problem at its root, and that is equity.
Thank you both for sharing it. And I love that you brought up the equity approach as well, because that's something that UNICEF takes in all of our work. And not to put anyone in the spot, but can anybody tell us the difference between equity and equality? Anyone? We have an exercise that we do sometimes. So equality would be sort of everybody being on equal footing, right? So if I were to tell everyone to crumple up a piece of paper that was the same size piece of paper and throw it at this microphone, right? Everyone's being treated equally, and I said, go. The folks at the front would have a much easier time hitting the microphone than the folks in the back. And so this approach, this equity approach of investing in the folks, the most vulnerable, those that are farthest from the back, to bring them so that we all kind of have a fighting chance to hit the microphone. So just really glad you brought that up. And my next question is for you as well. So you have a long history of working with incarcerated folks, as you mentioned. So can you tell us a little bit about the connection between mental health issues, incarceration, and gang violence or gang presence?
Sure. So, unfortunately, our criminal justice system is like the repository of all of the broken systems that we have in our country. And so, when I talk about the work that has been done in criminal justice, I oftentimes talk about one young man that I met very early on in my career, Timothy. So I met Timothy when he was 17 years old and charged with the murder of his best friend. Timothy was he was like every other young person growing up in Chicago. He had dreams, he had goals, but those dreams and goals were obliterated by the darkness that surrounded him. The darkness of abuse within the home, abuse outside of the home, homelessness, violence in the community, everything that you can possibly think of. And the systems that were in the community that were supposed to protect men and women like Timothy didn't. They didn't see the darkness that he was experiencing. They didn't see the pain that he was in. He was in great emotional and mental pain. And that just continued to escalate, and his mental well-being and physical well-being continued to deteriorate because no one offered supportive resources to him. It wasn't long before Timothy joined a gang. And when he joined that gang, he finally felt whole. He felt like somebody cared about him. He felt like someone finally saw him for who he was. And it was nothing more than just that for him. It was an opportunity to be seen when no other system saw him. And one day, he and his friends, his fellow gang members, were standing in front of his house. Some rival gang members pulled up, and the result was Timothy's best friend ended up being killed. And I don't know the particulars of what happened that day, but what I know is that the young man that was sitting in front of me at Cook County Jail at 17 years old, now charged with murder, was the result of our failures in the community. He had been locked out of every system in the community that, again, was supposed to protect him, and now he found himself locked in a system that he couldn't get out of. And so now Timothy is spending the rest of his life locked in the criminal justice system. And that just gives you an example of this intersection of trauma, mental health, and gang violence. We can do so much on the front end to disrupt these cycles like this if we just take the initiative through our individual efforts and our organizational efforts to actually see the young people who are most impacted for who they are and the gifts and talents that they have.
Thank you for tying that all together. That was really good talking about those intersections. And so I know that these systems are not unique to Chicago. So Luke, I know that you've done work in Chicago, you've done work in Honduras, all over the world. So can you talk a little bit about some of the similarities and some of the differences that you see in that intersection that Nico was talking about where you work?
Yes. Honduras, whole of the ballgame. I mean, here in Chicago, pure violence, we have two types of workers. We have interrupters and outreach workers. Outreach workers work on the behavior change, and they will walk with you through your process. When we implemented the model in Honduras, we weren't able to identify all these workers. And not to identify them, but to implement that role, because there was no resources. There was nobody to connect from them. You know, here in Chicago, we have other organizations, we have schools, we have opportunities. In Honduras, these opportunities didn't exist. So we work with interrupters. We also adapted that model, the model on who our interrupters are in the United States. We work in New York, Baltimore, New Orleans. Pretty much we're global now. And most of our interrupters in the US were part of a lifestyle. You know, they were incarcerated, they may have a felony, but they're credible to get into the community. When we implemented the model in Honduras, these persons didn't exist. There is no gang member or ex-gang member or retired gang member or a gang member that fell back in Honduras, Salvador, or Guatemala. Because the only way out of the game over there is they're going to kill you, or you have to be put in a church where they monitor you. That's it. So I understand why people are fleeing Honduras and Salvador, because I'm in their community. I get it. You know, here, our communities, the game structure has changed here. But in Honduras, if they knock on your door and tell you to have your daughter ready at 5 o'clock, I'm going to pick her up. You're going to have her ready at 5 o'clock because that game member is going to pick her up. And pretty much you know she's not coming back home. If they knock on your door and say, we want you to vacate your home by 8 o'clock, you're going to vacate your home. Or they're going to come in and kill the whole family. These are the communities I work in. When the corruption is all over the world that I've seen, it's changed me, it's humbled me to work in these countries. Because when something happens in the community, in Honduras, in Chamelecon, they don't call the police, they call the gang leader. You know, we have two groups we work with. One group has zero tolerance on anybody stealing, because everybody pays rent. You know, that's taken from their money. Rent, what I mean is extortion. So if you steal anything, they don't call the police, they go to the gang leader, they have the La Casa de Tortura, the torture house in the community, and the gang leader is gonna decide what your discipline is gonna be. If they're gonna give you talazos with a paddle, cut a finger, cut a hand, you know. Very different, you know. I always every time I return home, I'm humbled. And when I return here to Chicago, this is where I was born and raised. And I hear about the violence going on here, and I see in the community where I grew up that they're killing each other. You know, we were talking about earlier, back in the day, if you were under a certain umbrella, you didn't kill each other. Now, most of the conflicts are internal here. There are no more rival gangs killing each other here. They're killing each other. So when I returned to Chicago here, my best friend's son just got killed, or the young girl that the Ochoa, that I know the family, you know, and you say, damn, this is going on here, we can't, I feel like we have the resources, we have all these organizations, all these people that care, we can fix it. If we all just came together, because I'm working in countries where it's hard to get a group like this to say, we have all these resources to this hit Chamelecon, you know? It humbles me, but the game structure is very different. Very, very different from lives that they're living in Honduras and Salvador and Guatemala. Again, I understand, I was sharing earlier, I understand what they're running from. But if you haven't been there, you will never understand, you know.
When I'm hearing Lupe talk about life in Honduras, I can't help but think how fortunate we are here in Chicago. Like, so many people, when they talk about Chicago, they talk about the violence and they talk about how dangerous the city is. But this city is also very beautiful, and it has incredible people, especially young people, who want to see the city change, who want to see their brothers and sisters and even themselves to be able to walk down the street and feel safe. And so, I'm encouraged that so many young people are buying into this notion that we're not the most dangerous city in the country. That there are beautiful parts and there are beautiful people, and they want to be a part of the solution. And so I encourage all of us in our individual capacity and our organizational capacity to have our young people at the table when we're thinking about ways that we can disrupt the violence here in Chicago and ways that we can continue to highlight the beautiful parts of this city.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for those stories and for helping know. You mentioned the term violence interrupter. So can you talk a little bit about what that actually looks like, maybe an example of interrupter, and the importance of identifying interrupters that are kind of in the local community and how that works?
I started with care violence as a violence interrupter. I started with care violence, back then it was called ceasefire, as a violence interrupter. I was sharing that they reached out to me because my brother came home from prison and he was credible, and he said, come on, let's go check out this program. They're reaching out to me. And I was working in the community. I said, no, I'm good. He said, come on, let's go check this out. They keep reaching out to me, So I said, I don't know. I'm good where I'm at. I'm working in a little village in Brent Park and Pilsen. And he said, well, let's check it out. Let's see what it is. And I remember going to ceasefire at that time to the university. I met Dr. Gary Slutkin and Brent Decker. Brent is my boss, my mentor. And I remember going into the meeting and saying, okay, I know all of these people from back in my day. And if these people are here, I know they're credible, and I know they're not snitches, and I know they're not informants. So they're doing something right here. And I volunteered. They offered me a job, and I said, I don't know, let me check this out. So I volunteered for about 6 months to get a feel for it. And yeah, I believe in this work. An interrupter I was an interrupter because I come from a community. I was born and raised in the community. I can get in. Pretty much, not just anybody can get in. I can mediate a conflict at the moment. We talk a lot about how the brain works. We all have it inside. That reaction of being mad. Where that switch that turns that and brings you back to say, I use consequences a lot. When they're going to react, my brother always said it. If he could take that 1 minute back, that 1 second back, he wouldn't have given 25 years of his life. So if we can at that moment interrupt the reaction, we're saving their life and somebody else's life. So an interrupter is somebody that comes from the community, has credibility, and is able to interact with the individuals that are most likely to be in violent and are involved in the violence in the community. In Honduras, it's different. Honduras, the interrupters are El Señor Don Alfonso that has a welding shop and all the guys hang on his corner and he yells at them, but they respect him. La Señora Rosa, that her son died through violence, but the guys hang in front of the house and she gives them, feeds them. El Señor Don Adan, that's the taxi driver and everybody knows him. So we've adapted the model to who our interrupters are in Honduras. They're credible messengers. They come from the community, have credibility, and they can work with individuals that pretty much nobody wants to work with.
Thanks for sharing that. And I think it's great you bring that example of kind of when you see red, right? That flip switches and who can talk you down. And if you think about, or in my own life, when I think about who can talk me down, it's people that I know, people that I trust. And so that important role that the interrupter takes this is an issue that we haven't talked specifically about how it impacts kids, but it impacts them in so many ways. They're recruited into the gangs when they are children. The parents who are killed are parents of the kids, that obviously affects them, and they live with a lot of trauma because of that. And so, Nika, can you talk a little bit about the importance of taking a trauma-informed approach to this issue? And I know you're working on developing a lot of trauma-sensitive approaches to it for Chicago's youth, so if you can talk about that as well.
Sure. So when we talk about trauma sensitivity, with Chicago Beyond and I, we have this vision of a trauma-sensitive city for Chicago's youth, made with Chicago's youth. And so what does that look like? It's a city where our young people feel safe and they feel supported, and it's where every policy, practice, and the organizational vision and mission statements are all understanding of the impact of trauma and are focused on supporting our young people who have been exposed to trauma. So that's what a trauma-sensitive city looks like. And so through my work at Chicago Beyond, I've been able to have pretty incredible conversations with many of our young people. And just to tell a quick story, I was meeting with a community organization in Kenwood. Kenwood is considered the south side of Chicago. And talking in general with the young people there, it was a group of about 20, 25 young people, all African American. And then talking with the young people generally about trauma, mental wellness, and health and healing, this one young man said something that has stuck with me, and I try to share it wherever I go. He said, when a natural disaster occurs, the American Red Cross sends crisis workers into communities. Everyone knows that we're in crisis, that no one is coming to help us. If I could have dropped the mic on the floor in that moment, I would have. And so that conversation and so many others prompted us to think about what we could do to put resources in the hands of our young people. And so I, along with 14 experts in mental wellness, trauma, youth engagement, philanthropy, education, we formed a trauma advisory council, and we developed a mental wellness curriculum for high school age youth. And the mental wellness curriculum is meant to be a peer-to-peer resource that young people can learn and can share with their colleagues, their friends. And so we're piloting that mental wellness curriculum right now in an alternative high school also on the south side of Chicago. And we're working with a community mental health partner to offer more comprehensive resources in that school so that we can show our community and our city what a trauma-sensitive school looks like. And now we also have the opportunity to work with a school system to think about what a trauma-sensitive school system looks like for our young people and helping that system to actually get there. And then the last major effort that we're working on is around children whose parents are incarcerated. So that is a personal experience that I've had. My father was incarcerated when I was young, and our founder of Chicago Beyond, Liz Dozier, her father was also incarcerated when she was younger. And so we know that this is just one group of young people who have been exposed to trauma, but it's a group that we don't often know about, and it's a group whose numbers are rising. I said that Chicago has one of the largest jails in the country, so that means that we have one of the largest populations of children whose parents are incarcerated, yet we don't know who they are, we don't do anything to support them. And so we're working with our local criminal justice stakeholders to change that. We, for the first time, want to think about how children can actually have contact visits with their loved ones in jail. If many of you didn't raise your hands about knowing about Cook County Jail, but I can tell you, most men and women who sit there, they're there for months and even years. It is not a quick turnaround. This is not a speedy trial situation that they go through. The person that was there the longest while I was there for 8 years awaiting trial. And that's 8 years that they don't have contact with any loved ones. You only visit with your loved ones through a pane glass window. You cannot touch your children. So we're working with our local criminal justice stakeholders to change what that looks like. so that we can continue to, again, support our young people who are at increased risk of incarceration themselves if they don't have that ongoing contact with their incarcerated parent and if they don't have a supportive adult.
So it sounds like some amazing programs. Thanks for your work. Throw it to the crowd here. Does anybody in the room have any questions for Anika or Lupe? Okay. Let's start here. I saw this hand first. If we need to, I'll get up and run the mic. But otherwise, maybe stand up and then so we can hear you. And because I think there's a lot of questions in the room, let's try and keep these as succinct as we can, so we can get to as many as we can.
I was just wondering, like, about the wellness curriculum. Like, what does it look like? I'm just not sure, like, what exactly it entails, or what are the experiences?
Glad you asked. So we know that there is a great stigma, especially in communities of color, when we're talking about mental wellness and trauma. And so we wanted to create something that would be culturally relatable to our young people. The most powerful tool our young people use is music. And so most of the curriculum entails music as a way to engage our young people in conversations about wellness. So for example, instead of a typical clinical term like journaling and having the young people to write out their feelings in this like really, sterile way, we say we're writing bars. Our young people love to write music, and so this is what you learn when you hang around our young people. And so they write poetry, they write bars, but what is happening is they're writing out their feelings. And they're getting that out and they're sharing that with their friends and their families, so we have a better idea of what's going on. And they're not holding it inside, so that just gives you one example.
I know we had a handful of other hands as well, so put them up, and maybe we'll take 3 at a time so we can get through them. So I see one jacket, one in the very back there with the armband, and then we'll do the very red hand.
I wanted to ask you, when you go to Honduras and you go to these countries, who are you reaching out to first? Is it kids? Is it party gangs? Is it families? Like, what is kind of the approach that you take?
Well, when we arrived in Honduras, we spent about 3 months there, and we reached out. Our goal is to identify a local community organization that's doing work in the community and has credibility, to partner up with them. So what we do is in Honduras, we were not able to identify this local organization, and in a conference we met a pastora. They were doing the work. She led us to meet interrupters. We did hiring panel. We identified interrupters. I could say that in Chamelecon, that we've been working now 5 years. We've had like a 65% reduction in violence. We've done some great work. We are now working with UNICEF in Honduras. We're expanding into 4 departamentos, 5 other parts of Honduras. So yeah, we partner up with a local organization, and then we identify interrupters, we target the community. Our overall goal is to change behavior and reduce the violence. We started working in the schools. In Honduras, again, it was very different than Chicago. We had to adapt who our interrupter was, and we targeted the schools because a lot of the gang leaders, their kids were in the schools, extorting the teachers, or turning in the blank white paper with a number 18 on it, saying, you know who my family is. I'm not going to do no work if you're going to pass me. So these are the kind of things that we see in Chamelecon, and we started work targeting the younger kids. Here in Chicago, we target kids 15 to 26. In Honduras, we're starting with 9 to 28. So, you know, to change, 9 years old, they're already carrying a gun, they're already the ones posted up, calling the leaders.
Okay, and then I think the one in the back.
Can you guys hear me here? Okay. Obviously, we're having a transition of power in Chicago with the mayor, and just last week, I think she announced the office of equity, which is the first one Chicago will ever have. And my question is just, what role does our local government have in solving these problems, and how do you think you guys are going to be able to work organizations to interface with the new administration?
Yeah, So we have thankfully been included in conversations with our mayor-elect and applaud her efforts with respect to equity. For her to hire the chief equity officer before she's even in office, that tells me that this is top of mind. And so I'm incredibly encouraged about the trajectory that we're taking right now. And in those conversations, of course, we always want to keep top of mind who we are having at the table. And that's really, I think, at the root of equity. It can't just be people like us in the room, leaders of organizations, and it has to involve the people who are most impacted by violence, especially our young people. We have to have their voice at the heart of the table and at the heart of solutions. And so we'll continue to have those conversations and hopefully begin to see forward movement.
Okay, then I think we had a question.
Yes, Dr. Nika. When you're working with at-risk youth, and let's say I as a parent see your child just about to fall off the cliff, but yet there's the privacy and is it a child or is it an adult, and you as a parent no longer can advocate the way you would if the child was young. How do you impact, how can you make a difference with young people when they're considered adults? You can't stop until you can't influence, and now they're already in jail. Am I making my point?
I think so.
As an adult trying to advocate for young people, you can only go so far because then the system says you can't.
Right. And a couple of things I'll say to that. One, there's always an angle that we can take in engaging our young people. And me personally, I always try to go into a situation understanding that that young person has just as much knowledge about how to best support them as I might think that I do. And so I start by listening. People talk when they have someone who's willing to listen. And so that's the first thing I will say. Secondly, I will say I've learned especially in my work at the jail and continuing at Chicago Beyond, is that our personal work is never done. And so even as we're engaging with young people and trying to support young people, it's important that we also challenge our own biases and perceptions so that when we're showing up in these spaces, we show up in our best possible way. So I'll give you an example. So I'm a transplant to Chicago. I'm from a small town in North Carolina. And I started at the jail with psychologists. I'm like, I know everything. You can't tell me anything. And so the first young person that I met with, he was 18 years old. He was an active gang member, and he was charged with murder. And I sat down with him, and I'm like, he's violent. I'm going in with all these labels. He's at risk, he's violent, that changed how I interacted with him. And it wasn't until he called me out on it that I realized that I needed to come in with a different perspective. He was a person first, a man second, and then I started to listen to his story. It softened me up, and I no longer saw this hardened gangbanger. I saw a man who had, again, much like Timothy, had such incredible talent that wasn't fully developed. And so we began talking about those talents, and we started thinking about ways for him to act on those talents even when he was in a correctional institution. And so I just always am reminded of that interaction, because even now sitting where I am, I know that I'm still going in with biases and assumptions that are just it's going to be apparent to the individual I'm speaking with, and that's why I like to start off by listening.
Thanks, and I think you've both done such a great job of framing the issues that we have and then some solutions. So getting at the root cause, that trauma, the fact that we're human, the fact that it's really even a sense of community that they get that interrupting violence right at the right moment. I mean, these issues run so deep and it's so systemic. But what is the sort of, in closing here, the one thing, if you could leave everyone in the room, what's the one thing that they could do right now to help move the needle on this issue a little bit? What would that be?
I guess, on my point of view, would be to listen, to hear them out, and we all have a story, we're persons, you know. We all have a story. If I don't share my story, nobody would know why I'm here today, or why I'm going to work. I'm going to believe in them. Our kids need all of us. You know, we have, it's just that they're the simple things. Don't take the little, you know, the little things are big things to our kids in the community. And taking the time, even a hug. You might be the only hug they had in who knows how long. You know, but the simple things, that's what I would be.
I'm going to cheat a little bit and give 3 quick things. So, one, I already said, challenging our own biases and perceptions. I can't say that enough. It's not those children who are impacted, it's all of our children who are impacted. 2 studies have been done in Chicago that says 75 to 85% of our young people have been exposed to violence. That's not those young people, that's our young people. Secondly, have conversations. Have conversations with each other, with our young people. Like I talked about before, there is great stigma, especially in communities of color, in talking about mental wellness and trauma. Educate ourselves and then educate our young people. You can do that simply by having a conversation and starting that conversation off by listening. And then thirdly, just showing up. Showing up and seeing our young people. I talked about Timothy, I talked about my interactions with a couple of others that I met at the jail, and I just think about how their lives could have been differently, could have gone different, had people seen them for who they were and the talents and abilities that they had when they were younger. So show up and actually see people.
All right, let's hear for awesome candidates. Thank you both.